Space, the final frontier. Well, okay, not really. All right, take two. Here in the Mitten State, welcome to Code 47, bringing you all things Star Trek, spanning the quadrants, the best thing since the neutral zone.
And we are back again on the Secret Friends Podcast Network. It is episode 123 or 123 of the Code 47 podcast, where we are talking about all things related to Star Trek. I've got these two lovely gentlemen here with me this evening. Oh my God, we're in a time paradox. It's perfect. But I am Charlie Carden. I am your Trek Lord of West Michigan, humble commanding officer of the USS Grand Petoskey here in West Michigan of Starfleet International. I am joined, as often I am, by these two fine gentlemen. To my extreme left, my chief engineer and regular cohort, Mr. Peter Stein. Hello, Peter.
Hello.
Happy Monday. We are recording on a Monday evening, and apologies for the Monday drop, but there was a little fan event regionally called C2E2, which my next guest was in attendance. That's Mr. Aaron Heminger of the USS Rhapsody in Benton Harbor. Aaron, how are you, and how was the show?
Hi, everybody. I'm doing really good. We had a blast at the show. A ton of fun. Got to meet up with a lot of friends, and I actually got to meet some childhood heroes of mine this weekend. That was pretty exciting. And I actually had a fun little photo shoot with a little alien booth that they had set up.
Yes.
Yeah. That was amazing.
That was so cool. I saw the pictures you posted. That's awesome. Peter and I were not there this year, but we were there last year, which is when we did our Star Trek Voyager shoot with several local friends, which is pretty awesome. And likely we'll get back next year, but we had some other conflicts, which just didn't result in us getting to go. But that's a great show just because we have so many Chicago friends, including Jen Watson, who is usually here with us. But I think she crunched a little bit too much crunch because she took a pass on this episode, which I completely understand. But we have
exhausting.
Yeah, no doubt. But we have kind of a fun episode. We're going to be, of course, talking about new content in the form of two recent episodes of Star Trek Discovery, and then we're going to be jumping in and doing a little wrap up of the what could have been the what if Star Trek version of a potential season 5 that we did not get of Star Trek Enterprise. So we will get to that in segment 2. But first and foremost, got to pay some bills. We always love to give love and homage to the wonderful folks that support us on the top tiers of our Secret Friends Unite Patreon. You can visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite. And for a free 7-day trial, you can sample our great wares. Peter and I have been doing a series on my Facts of Geek Life about Battlestar Galactica, for example. So we take a great show we enjoy, we take a season, and then we split it into several episodes, and that's what we talk about. Eventually, Aaron and I will probably connect about something like that. But hey, it's content and it goes on. Also, Todd Oxtra, who is my main guy over on our main show, he and I do a great show about comics called Spin a Rack, where we take usually a trade paperback or several issues of something, and we break it down as well. So again, free 7-day trial of all of those podcasts. We've been making shows for over a year, so there's a lot of content that you can check out. But it's all in no small part to these wonderful people. On our Friends with Benefits level, Corey and HG, John Sedorf, the awesome Phoenix Sisters cosplay, Brendan Myers, and Matthew Keel. And our top tier family is the Nias family, Sean, Stella, and Henry of the Twin Cities. We are very grateful for you guys, for all of you. One more time, if you visit patreon.com/secretfriendsunite, you can try us out for 7 days. And as Arnold Schwarzenegger says in that pivotal fight scene, well, it's not even a pivotal fight scene, in Predator, when he chucks that big knife into that dude, stick around. I know that was a long run up. I apologize. But anyway, all right. Well, I didn't have any news that I found to be really compelling this time around. There's always a little bit here, a little bit there, but it's like, it'd be great if this came out, or hope this comes out soon, or something and so forth. So without further ado, we will just kind of jump into talking about Star Trek Discovery. Now, again, we're running a couple of episodes behind because it makes sense for us to really just talk about 2 so that we have a little bit more time to break them down instead of trying to cram in 3 or 4, depending on how things are going. So we're covering episodes 3 and 4 this time. And Peter, I'm going to assign you episode 3 because I know you have some strong thoughts, I think, or was it episode 4? That you said, I got some strong thoughts about?
I have thoughts about both, but 3 especially.
Then I think it'd be absolutely perfect for you to read the summary and then kick us off. So if you would be so kind.
All right, so Season 5, Episode 3, entitled Janal. On Trill, Burnham, Booker, and Culber must pass a dangerous test to prove themselves worthy of the next clue. Adira reconnects with Gray, kind of, and Saru's first day as ambassador is complicated by his engagement to Tarina.
So
that gets you all A, B, and C plots at once.
I know, boy. I was going to say, sometimes on Memory Alpha they get it really thin, and sometimes they really hit it on the head. So, Peter, it sounds like you weren't a fan. I'm going to join you in saying that I wasn't super duper thrilled with this episode, and I think it's pretty clear that because it has a strong connection to 2 characters I can't stand, that's probably not a surprise. But why don't you start walking us down the road of how you felt about this segment?
Well, I just want to say it didn't really have anything to do with the characters so much as it did with just things that happened.
Okay. Or what some people might call the plot. Some people might call it that. I don't know.
I mean, the plot was fairly straightforward, so there wasn't really a problem with the plot in terms of what, like, A to B. It was the circuitous random route that it went to get there.
Right.
So basically they have this whole thing where they need to find the next bit and they need to go, and apparently there's a Trill symbiont that's still alive that was probably the one that hit it.
Right.
Interesting idea. Trill symbionts do live a long time.
Right.
The first note that I have was kind of funny, where it was like, oh no, what are the odds the symbiont has stole your man for Adira? But I was completely wrong, but that was just my initial thought.
Oh my gosh. Yeah.
It was like, there has to be tension here. What's it going to be?
Yeah. You're going to thought it was going to turn into a whole Maury Povich kind of situation, right?
Yeah, it wasn't.
Yeah. Back in the day we had Jerry. Jerry was the show that you always had, like, you come out and then people start swinging. So you thought it was going to be like a throwdown at the Trill Baths?
Well, not a throwdown, but just like, this is why we're not going to see the character again, or why Gray is staying on Trill or something. I was like, there's tension clearly. They have to do something, and that's where my brain went. That's not what happened, obviously. But I just thought it was a funny note. We get Raynor coming onto the ship for the first time, which is this is the B plot here is really what lost the episode for me.
Okay.
Especially in connection to the juxtaposition between it and the A plot.
Okay.
Because the whole point, like the beginning, Burnham says connection isn't a skill, it's a choice.
Right. Well, I like the line.
Which I hate that line.
Sorry. Okay. But I hate that line. No, I thought it was cool. I thought it was cool, and I don't
bad line,
and I don't necessarily disagree. But why do you hate it? I'm curious. Why do you hate it? And then we'll get Aaron involved, because right now he's just kind of the nodding and smiling man. I feel bad. Aaron, please jump in if you have thoughts.
Oh yeah, no worries.
I think there's an accuracy to it, but it's not an either or. It's a both and so that's why I don't like it. Because it's like, he's like, this kind of connection isn't my skill. And she's like, it's not a skill, it's a choice. It's like, it's both, Burnham, you butthead.
Jen's going to be mad she missed this episode.
I just had to go with the alliteration.
All right.
That's the only reason.
I guess you're right. I like the line, but I also kind of see where you're
my problem is that because of the way that they try to throw it here, then it throws Raynor into he's an asshole this entire episode. And then there's a really, really, I don't think they did this necessarily on purpose, but what it ends up with Tilly is you have her being a complete ass, and then they try to show that she's the one in the right, and she's the one who misunderstands her own point. Yeah. And that's where I think this B plot really, really falls apart, is that they try to force Rayner to follow whatever Burnham's command style is, even though she said that she didn't necessarily want him to do that in the previous episode, and then they double down on this idea later. But they try to force him into her command style, and then you have Tilly, who is not a commander, breaching the chain of command, breaching it again forcefully in a way that would have, under every other captain on every other ship, landed her in the brig.
Right.
And so there were a lot of decisions here that were really, really stupid, that they're trying to make a point of, like, you have to understand where someone else is coming from. And that's what they were doing with Burnham and Book. And that worked mostly. But then when you juxtapose it with this, the whole lesson falls on its face. And the stuff with Saru and Tarina, that's trying to make the same point. That works better. But the stuff with Rayner, it did not work here.
And we're not even on the A plot.
No,
I'll tell you what. Let's shift gears for a sec. Aaron, jump in. Where do you land with this?
Yeah, I gotta say, I continue to vibe Rayner really hard. Like, I'm really enjoying his character, and I kind of, he's an asshole, but he's like a likable asshole, I think.
Right? Yeah. Yeah.
And he's kind of refreshing. And I think he works in that I get what they're trying to do with him, in that he's supposed to be a mirror for Michael.
Right.
Kind of like where she was, and she's kind of trying to help him, be better, I guess.
Be best.
And to a certain extent, that does, I'm in the same boat as you, Peter. That does drive me nuts a little bit, because I think that his style does kind of work. But at the same time, when you're a first officer, you do kind of have to relent a little bit to the captain's way of doing things, to a certain extent. I mean, you have to push back, you have to challenge, you have to provide alternatives, but it doesn't, you don't have to 100%, conform to their command style fully. I love the concept of him bringing everybody into his office while he's working. And I love that whole, they come in and he's like, all right, you have 20 seconds. Tell me something about you that I can't read about in your file. Like, that whole sequence to me was just, I thought it was delightful. And I was like, yeah, okay, he's getting to know them a little bit better. He's getting to learn what's important to them. He's getting a lot of information from this back and forth. I mean, to a lot of people, it seems like nothing, but I feel like, he is getting to know them to a certain extent. I thought that was really cool, and I thought that was a neat way of doing that.
Honestly, when you look at the A plot, it was serviceable, because we're going on a quest and blah, blah. And that's what the whole season is about. That's all well and fine, I suppose. The stuff with Saru and Trina, I don't know. I don't even really necessarily have a place to stand on that, but I'm going to kind of go with Aaron on this one. I like seeing Rayner do what he does. And I was fond of the expression, because I feel like we're all right. She's partially right in saying it's a choice. It's also really not, because some people just don't have it in them, or whatever it is. Like I said, we get a block in here with Gray and Adira, which is nails on a chalkboard to me, but I don't need to go over that again and again and again. And then, Tilly, you're right. She's going for broke. Oh, I can speak freely, so you're an asshole. Oh, yeah, Peter, I'm with you. If she would have decided to run that shit up on Kirk or Picard or even Janeway, who is a sweetheart by comparison, she would have been out of an airlock. So, yeah, I feel like it's kind of too much to make the point that he's an outsider and he's got to toe the line, and you got to, do it our way.
She also makes the point of, like, respect is earned and goes both ways, and she's not willing to give him that.
Yeah,
and I found that to be a very just because of how Tilly's character has worked up till this point.
Right.
It just seems very weird to me that they're choosing to make her character do that.
It's just, and it's not very, Starfleety, because, yes, we've watched this character's journey and she's gone a lot of ways, but Starfleet, and maybe Starfleet's not quite as, regimented as it was in the time that we known it, but rank certainly in any of the terrestrial militaries that we have here, a lieutenant is not mouthing off to a commander and telling him where the bear sits, and there's no consequences just because permission to speak freely. I don't know. Total sidebar. This is something that April pointed out when we first watched this many weeks ago because we had the screener. The neck chevron and its various. It can either go to one side or it can magically split down the middle, because you know how Reno Tignataro, who appears here, and she's a joy. She's the greatest newer character that we have on the show. When she because her shirt is always like kind of quarter zipped. Her neck chevron is in two separate, beautiful, unlatched pieces. What later on, when Hugh, who is, I don't want to use the word possession, when he's Jintaraed up,
coinhabited,
when he unsnaps his neck, it's in one piece to the side. Costume anomalies. Once again, Gray and Adira. Everything about them. I wrote, who cares? Poorly scripted, poorly acted. I can't stand the characters. I'm sorry. And again, as I've said in previous episodes, I know that they are not for me. I know that they are for somebody, but I'm the jerk with the microphone here, so I'm expressing myself that good for the writers for pushing it forward and putting it in front of a different audience. I hope they're watching, and I hope they're appreciating it, because it does help, grow the brand that we all love. But yowza. So
I do want to make two notes that I thought were interesting, positive.
Okay. All right. Let me move to the edge of my seat. Tell me all about it.
I did enjoy that they made a Dominion War callback, because that explained the time period that they were dealing with.
Yep. I liked it. Yeah. So we know that all of this happened within less than a decade from the chase. So yeah. So that's cool.
I also found it very funny that it's 900 years and we're still in a shit contest with the Zenkethi. Like, they just don't like anybody. I thought that was really funny.
Some beefs are never going to wrap up, and the Breen too. The Breen are going to are going to find their way into this story more and more as time goes on. So, but anyway,
I did think that the creature that they were dealing with was an interesting idea, with a natural cloak and some sort of energy. Well, it was biological blaster. It was interesting.
Yeah, it
felt a little like it belonged in Mass Effect rather than this, or Halo.
Well, it was like the creature from Darmok. You know what I mean? Because that's what that creature was like.
The cloaking was very similar to the one at Darmok. Yeah. So I thought that they were interesting. Yeah. So that was we haven't seen the surface of Trill. We've just seen the caves and a couple of buildings. So seeing some of the fauna.
Right.
Cool.
Right. Exactly. So, all right. Final thoughts, Aaron. Again, you've talked less than anybody. I feel like we always kind of push in a corner. So, take the microphone. What are your wrapping up thoughts of the episode?
Oh, that's all good. I'm happy to let y'all cook. It's okay. But no, I did have a few points I wanted to hit on with this episode. I'll start with the creature. It was an interesting concept, but when I saw it with the cloaking thing, all I could think in the back of my mind was it's there was this old show back in the day called Mantis.
Yes. Yes.
For their season finale, they couldn't afford a creature, so they had an invisible T-Rex that was rampaging through the city, and that was their big final bad. And that's such the stereotypical, cost saver concept. Oh, it's an invisible monster, so they saved money, on the budget by doing it that way. And that's all I could think the entire time was, oh my god, it's an invisible T-Rex. They're fighting an invisible T-Rex. So
with the little arms. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So that was that got me a little bit. It's an interesting concept, but it's just that's all I could think of. The other thing that's driving me nuts about Discovery, and it happened again in the next episode too. These transporters are driving me.
Yes, my God. Yeah. Oh, it's whenever it needs to not work. Yeah. Those friggin' transporters. We'll call the episode "Conditional Transporters" if you like.
Right? It was driving me nuts. They're sitting here hiding from this monster under this rocky alcove, and they're like, okay, well, let's just teleport away. Oh, we can't do it because the minerals in the rocks. And I'm like, walk 5 feet in either direction.
Just run. You have a built-in transporter. Oh wait, it doesn't work that way in the next episode. I don't know.
And they did that in the episode prior to this, where they were like, return to the beam down point. I'm like, what beam down point? There's no beam down points. It's just
they keep forgetting how they reinvented their transporters in season 3.
Because it's cool when it doesn't break the status quo of the dramatic narrative. But when it does, oh man, they don't work. Oh no, there's a shield or whatever. Minerals in the planet's surface. Anything you want.
A couple of minutes ago, you got Booker jackrabbiting around with the teleporter, like all over the place to confuse the monsters that they're fighting. It's like, okay, so clearly it's not an area effect. It's just that one spot you're standing in.
Right.
So that drove me up a wall. And then on the Grey and Adira thing and all that, I like Trill. I don't really hate any of the characters on the show. I have nothing against them or anything like that. But I do admit, while I was watching it, I after the previous episode with Michael breaking up with Booker, and then this episode, I'm like, this show is like the reverse Love Boat. This is where relationships go to die, you know. Everybody's breaking up with everybody up in
New name of the episode, where relationships go to die. Thank you. I was afraid we weren't going to come up with something. I was nervous. Oh my gosh, where relationships go to die. All right. Well, while I'm typing that, if we're happy to wrap up and move on, Aaron, episode 4 is going to be yours, Peter, unless you had anything else.
I just wanted to make one quick note. There's something that this episode starts towards the end that is continued later, not in the episode that we're touching on. But there's kind of like a tie into spirituality at the end.
Okay.
Which is an interesting thing. As a philosopher, I have an issue with it because it's got a very bad definition, which I won't bore you with. But it's interesting to see how they're trying to tie that back in, which goes back to my original theory, which I think I may have mentioned, that we're going to get some sort of Final Frontier weirdness when we find out the result of all the technology and whoever we're meeting, because that seems to be where they're gearing towards.
Gotcha. So. Yes, there is much gearing going on. Okay, Aaron, season 5, episode 4 is yours.
Okay, fantastic.
Take it off.
Season 5, episode 4. The title of this episode is Face the Strange, which, gotta admit, I love that title. Very enigmatic and reminds me of a classic song. So, summary. On the way to the next clue, the USS Discovery is sabotaged by a mysterious weapon, leaving Captain Burnham, Rayner, and Stamets as the only crew members who can possibly save the ship in time.
Let's do the time warp again. I don't have the moves. I'm sorry. If you're watching the YouTube, don't throw trash at me. I apologize. I'll start this time because you did that, and then so we'll go me, and then back to you, and then Peter can pipe in. But Peter, certainly feel free to jump in, kind of where it makes sense for you. I actually really enjoyed this episode, and again, I watched it just now because I had the screener, which had the first 4, which I watched, last month. So this was a refresher for me. And I thought this was really great. Maul and Locke very briefly appear in the beginning. They get a clue. They poison a guy. I'm like, that's very on brand for them. I like that. There's a mercifully short video chat between Gray and Adiro. Please go away. Everything they say to me is just so forced and just blah. It's like I'm watching a middle school play. I can't take it. My rant is over. But yeah, we find out right away that because we caught right at the end of the episode, Maul was in disguise, and she back on Trill. She managed to use that to plant this piece of cool tech, which I'm gonna give them some respect. The time bug, which is the
Krenim time bug,
is a Krenim chronophage. So we get Krenim, great Voyager species, and phage, which was not related to the Krenim, but it was related, of course, to the help me out here. The Vidians. Thank you very much. So obviously that's a name and only connection, but a time bug, and again, this is so very Star Trek, but it just really, really works for me. A time bug will plug itself in to a warp engine or a source of power, and then throw a environment into a state of temporal flux where it bounces back and forth. I do love that they took that, before we get into the main thrust of the plot, they took that and turned two Voyager references into a retelling of a Voyager episode, which was also in that series' final season. It was called Shattered. I had to look up the title. I'm great with TNG titles. I'm not always super duper great with the Voyager ones, but it was Chakotay, kind of a similar situation. Different parts of the ship were in constant state of flux, and eventually he enlists Janeway from the beginning of the series to help him go inject the gel packs with some goo that turns everything around, and a lot of similarities there. But of course, this was bigger and bolder with more punching and dark shadows and people wanting to cry and, just bold, moments happening. But yeah, we get, so what happens is that Rayner and Michael are in the ready room, and they get this indiscriminate amount of time in each little fray, and they don't know where they're going. So we go all the way back to before the ship was launched, where it was being built. And then we're in the beginning of season 1, which is where the kind of the most pivotal part of this. And then we're in part of season 3, and then we're in part of season 4, and bouncing around and trying to figure out a way. They're lucky because, yes, while it's the two of them, also Stamets, because he's like Guinan, he lives outside of linear time because of the tardigrade DNA. He's able to help them no matter where they are. So I'm loving this thing. We get a couple of good asides from Tig as Jet Reno being back, because she's my absolute favorite. And then we do, of course, we get the stakes out of this, which is, well, if you guys don't solve this, the bad guys will win, and it's the Breen that will wipe out Starfleet, which they see by jumping like 80 years into the future. Yeah, I actually really like this. I think it was the first episode. I'm not going to say that I found flawless, because there were just some things in here that were kind of obnoxious, because that's the way it is with all TV shows. But of the season, this has been my favorite so far. So, okay, that was me off the top. Aaron.
Yeah, I like the episode overall. I have to walk back a couple of things that I said from the previous episode, though, going into this episode.
Okay. All right.
I was vibing Rayner less this episode. I kind of felt like
he peaks and valleys. He's down here again.
Yeah, because it's like, to me, a lot of the plot going on with Rayner is like, well, we kind of like literally talked about this last episode, and now we're just kind of rehashing this idea again of, him not being communicative, and the crew trying to kind of get him to conform to their way of doing things a little bit. And this episode found that a little bit grating. But later we do get the payoff of when they're confronting their past selves, where Rayner is confronting some of the crew members, and he has to prove that he's from the future and everything, and he starts naming off things that that he learned about them from the conversation of the previous episode, and that worked in his favor. So I kind of like that aspect of it, but at the same time I'm kind of like, okay, but we already learned this lesson last episode. Let's not beat him over the head with the same idea. Okay, we get it. We want him to. We want him. You want him to be more like you. He's getting there. Let him go at his own pace. It's fine. So that wasn't great. I also made the comment that I there's nobody on this show that I don't dislike. Caveat: I like modern day Michael. I cannot stand early season Michael. And it was a little bit rewarding to me to see Captain Michael confronting past Michael and having that little exchange and that fight back and forth.
Wait, I had a name for it. Kung Fu fighting dancing with myself. I thought that could be an alternative name to the episode, but your where relationships go to die is superior. So you win.
Thank you. I like that one too, though. That's a really good one. But yeah, no, I enjoyed that, and that's one of those things I think a lot of us can relate to, where we wish we could see our younger selves and just kind of beat some sense into them every now and then. It was kind of nice to see this, and I like Michael, and I like where she is now. I think she's a great character. So that was really cool. And again, with the transporters, oh my God, these things kill me. Like the whole, when he chastises the bridge crew member, Rayner chastises one of the crew members for speaking out their opinion. She calls him into the office, like, go to my office. And they both just teleport into the office. I'm like, it's 10 feet away.
But if we can use it, let's use it, except for when we can't use it.
Your muscles are going to atrophy, people. It's going to be like Wall-E with the hover chairs. Get some steps in.
Yeah, exactly. Nobody's wearing their watch. But, yeah. Even though everybody's wearing their, because everything's in the communicator, except for when it's not.
But other than that, it was a fun episode. Those were my only nitpicks for this one.
All right, Peter, you have a handwritten nits to pick, or notes at the very least. I suppose I shouldn't put cards on the horse. So by all means.
I didn't like this one either. Just spoilers. We're in a stretch of ones that I didn't like. It happens.
Thank you for catching us up.
No, I'm saying I'm giving you a foretaste for the next one.
Okay.
I didn't like that one either.
Oh boy.
So it is what it is. I don't like what they're doing with Raynor. I know I said that about the last one. I really liked his line and his face when she was giving her speech to him, especially the "spare me the I got you" bullshit. Because that's me every time Burnham talks to someone about their feelings. Because it's like,
I had a description for her command style in that scene. I said, oh no, how far did I go? I lost my, keep talking. When I find, wait, here we go. She says, I said his hard acidness is bumping up against Michael's happy love fest approach to being captain.
Yeah. And they're two very, very different command styles. And
yeah,
I mean, I've been around plenty of military people. Burnham's style just wouldn't work.
Yeah.
And so for me, that's part of why it's just so irritating.
And you can't say, oh, well, she's a woman and it's just different.
No, it's not even that. It's just, it's a command style. I don't like her command style. It just doesn't work.
Janeway had some soft spots, but boy, she was, she
knew how to drill down, and sometimes it was too much, and sometimes it was too fixed.
Yeah, it was too
so
or Tuvix.
But that's the thing is, like, Janeway was allowed to have a range. She was allowed to mess up.
Yeah.
Burnham doesn't. And that's my struggle with her command style is they don't allow her to be wrong. Because there's a point of like, he's like, well, my style is like, we're doing like, I have my way of doing things. You have your way of doing things. And she's like, you have to do it my way. And he's like, my way is better. And it's like, what is this? Third grade?
Yeah. I'm like, rubber and you're glue.
Terrible comeback, dude. So I thought it was funny with the Krenim time bug. I appreciated the reference. I thought it was funny that it was an actual bug.
Right.
It was just amusing to me. Flipping through time was kind of interesting. I was slightly annoyed by the JJ-ness of San Francisco fleet yards.
Yes, that was definitely a dip.
Just because it's like, oh, remember how the original Enterprise plaque said San Francisco yards, so it must have been built on the ground?
Right.
No, it could have been a drag.
I don't remember that. But the JJ one was built in Iowa for absolutely no reason.
So it was just one of those like, whatever. So I did. I thought that Stammet. While I still have the opinion that the tardigrade DNA stuff for him being outside of time is a load of gooberness, I thought it was cool how he was able to like be where he was, kind of like have to remember what he was doing and then bullshit his way through it.
Right. Or I think it worked.
I thought it was great. And then I thought like when it was closer to time, he's like, there's a spore breach. You don't want stuff in your lungs. And everyone just books it. That was funny.
Right.
And then when he's also like, everyone out, I'm grumpy. I was bad back in the day. And I was like, yeah, you kind of were a butt back in the day. Yeah. So like, I enjoyed that they had those callbacks. That was good. There was a lot. There was a weird thing going on in this episode, and it continues into the next episode, where you have Burnham like expresses something about like it's not really like unworthiness or something, but it's some sort of concern, and then everyone around her has to be like, "Oh, you're so great," and it's very weird. In part because I don't think the character needs it.
Yeah.
He's very self-assured anyway. So it's just, it's an odd writing choice. Yeah. It's trying to make the character vulnerable when that's not a vulnerability that she has anymore.
Right. Yeah.
Right. Like they bring up the point of like she didn't want to be there, and I liked how they brought that up because then it comes up later. Like there is some character memory in these two episodes, which is good because that doesn't often happen.
Right.
But I like how that's there. But it just seems a little off for how it's being used.
I hear you.
An odd technical nitpick: popping the warp bubble. That was stupid.
Yeah, I didn't.
That felt very JJ verse. You don't.
Yeah,
it was the JJ verse felt like the East Australian current. You can spin out of it. That's not how warp drive works. Pop the bubble. You're not in warp drive anymore. And they're like, the bubble is what keeps us safe from relativity. It's like, yes, but no, that's not how that works.
Yeah, but I thought I heard in one of the it was right after Tig and Stamets were speaking. I thought on the PA overhead they were paging Ensign Cordero, which is of course would be a reference to Eugene Cordero, who I met on the cruise and absolutely loved. So I hope that was the case. No. I did not go back and watch it on the captions, but my headcanon is just going to say that it is. All right, so that's episodes 3 and 4. Other thoughts before we move on?
It was interesting seeing Ariam back again.
Yes.
There were some weird moments with that, particularly, wow, holograms. You used them in the entirety of the first season. That's not a surprise.
Right.
Or the way that she managed to get her to believe her. I know how you die. What?
Yeah.
How does that change anything?
That whole exchange was on top of one of my biggest pet peeves of the series is trying to make the bridge crew all of a sudden like their main characters, which they have just never felt like to me. Like they did a lot of that last season where Adira was fascinated with Detmer. And I'm like, we don't really know anything about her because she's ostensibly, they've never really developed any of those characters.
The thing with these characters is they're less developed than the original series cast.
Right,
and everyone complains about how Sulu and Chekhov and Uhura weren't well utilized.
Right.
I don't know. Like, I know their names now because it's season 5.
Right.
But I didn't know their names until like last season.
But sometimes it's a big struggle to remember them, I understand. So, all right, well, let's move on. We're on to episodes 5 and 6 next time. I've actually seen them all the way through episode 8. I think things are getting better, but I think there are things we liked and things that we found that were rocky about this first 4, but we will persevere. One thing that did not persevere was a little show called Star Trek Enterprise, which we wrapped up talking about last week. It was very famously canceled due to low ratings and general lack of interest in early 2005, and it ended with what is arguably the most pathetic series finale that has ever been within the franchise. Though who knows, something might come along to top it at some point. But something that I've always found kind of interesting is there's been plenty of talk since 2005, now almost 20 years, of what they wanted to do with what came, kind of beyond. So, I just realized one of the links I copied is not the one that I wanted it to be. It was supposed to be Enterprise Season 5. I used to have a great article about that. So I apologize. Well, let's kick it off. Peter, no, you know what? I'm going to kick it off with Aaron. I take it back because, Aaron, you watched many of these episodes of Enterprise for the first time for the purpose of this podcast. So, looking over some of the links that we've shared, talking about some of the different ideas, you've looked over kind of what I provided. Where would you see things going in a potential season 5 of Enterprise? What are some of the biggest points that you think they could have hit upon that would have turned the show around? Or rather, I should say, I think we all kind of share what we felt was a great turnaround in season 4. Where else do you think we could have gone?
Yeah, I feel like a lot of episodes of Star Trek kind of find their voice in like the second or third season sometimes, and that was definitely the case with Enterprise. And it's like it's a shame it got canceled because I feel like I'm just starting to get to know her. You know what I mean? But the stuff that I would like to see more development later on, I definitely want to see more of T'Pol and Trip's relationship. See that evolve a little bit more than what it was. I would have liked to see. I hate the fact that they had that kid, the clone child, in the second episode, and then that kind of didn't go anywhere. That just seems like a missed opportunity to me because I love this idea of these two, major officers aboard the starship suddenly having to deal with the fact that they've got this child out of nowhere and trying to learn what it is to be parents of a child that you don't necessarily have anything beyond a physical connection to, and what that meant for their relationship. I would have loved to see that awkward situation develop over time more.
Right.
And more of that. I just think it would be neat because I can't think of anything I've seen where that's an occurrence that's happened.
Right.
And Star Trek is like the perfect medium to explore that in.
Right. To take kind of a sitcom-y approach in some ways and sci-fi it up like, oh no, we don't like 3 Men and a Baby, but it's Florida man and the Vulcan, and raising a kid. So yeah, I gotcha. Yeah, I found what I was looking for. So the article that I thought I was sharing incorporated with ideas of Enterprise going across, so I apologize. But if you scroll down, there is a tab that says proposed 5th season episodes that had been discussed. So I'm going to, what I'm going to do? I'm going to blast through a couple of these and let's all jump on if we think they're interesting or not. So have you guys found it? That first link that it was either the first or second link that I get if you scroll down. And again, sorry, I know. Yeah, I know. Yeah, the memory alpha one. Just keep scrolling. Sorry, I know this makes for great radio. I apologize. Okay, so first one is the genesis of Stratos. From the episode The Cloud Minders, that was season 3 of TOS, a story about the Kzinti, which came from the TAS episode The Slaver Weapon, which actually got a nod in Picard season 1. Riker gave them a name drop. Development for the first Starbase, which actually kind of got a name drop in season 4. And one of Archer's logs, he mentioned that that's the mission they were on, as scouting sites for personal starbases. Another Mirror Universe story. I kind of know where we're going with this one. We started to get into some kind of crappier ones here. Borg Queen origin story. No, thank you. A story about the origin of T'Pol's father and him potentially being a Romulan agent, which I think that's a story that was also bandied about being Savik's origin, from Savik, the character from back in the TOS films. A story about Flint, who was the Requiem for Methuselah, ageless character. Visit to Denobula, totally makes sense. Let's see, other ideas. Mandy Cotto had hoped to start accepting fan scripts again, and also have arcs by noted science fiction writers David Brin, Gregory Benford, and Greg Bear. Don't know any of those guys. And the design for the 5th season refit was included in the 2011 Star Trek Starships of the Line calendar, but it was made canonical, as we know, in Picard season 2, because in flashbacks of Picard's youth, it is a toy model that he has in his childhood bedroom.
And we actually saw the ship herself in season 3.
Exactly. So that is right. We did. Very good.
And as a side note in here, they briefly considered a crossover with Doctor Who, which would have been a hoot and a half.
No. Yeah. Would that have even been legally possible?
Yeah. As long as both studios agreed to it.
Wow.
I mean, Doctor Who had a made-for-TV movie that aired here in the U.S. in the 90s. So it was completely possible.
Really?
It would have been absolutely wild to have Archer bumming around with Chris Eccleston.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah. It would have been David Tennant at this point.
Right. In 05. Yeah. That's crazy. All right. So briefly, before we move on to some of the others ideas in the other articles, what if any of those stories really jumps out to you guys? I myself think that a lot of them sound pretty interesting, with the exception of the first Starbase. I guess you'd really have to really flesh
it
out.
Depends on what you're doing with it, because it depends on the B plot was really.
Yeah, because it's not a driving hard plot. That's a situation that you might end up in, but it's not really driving a plot. Mirror Universe story, no. Borg Queen story, absolutely not. T'Pol's father, totally. I like the Requiem for Methuselah idea about Flint, but how do you really do that and then have that not bump up against the TOS episode? I don't really see how that works. Going to Denobula would be a romp. It would be a fun episode because it would be all about.
It'd be like a Rise episode or something
exactly.
Like that.
Exactly. So no, I think that's pretty excellent. Aaron, anything jump out at you that you think is great or just terrible?
I think the first space station could be potentially interesting because there's a lot of things that can go wrong, setting up a space station and everything. And it'd be kind of interesting to see a situation with them trapped on the station and trying to deal with some sort of hazard. Again, it's how you approach it, how you do it. There's a lot of good potential there. The business with T'Pol's father, I think that sounds amazing too.
Sounds like gold. Yeah, totally.
I love anything that ties into some of the stuff that we know. I think is pretty exciting, with of course the exception of the Borg Queen, because I mean you get too much into explaining the Borg and where they come from, and you lose so much of their appeal as antagonists and everything. So definitely, I would rather just leave that more to the imagination. Anything, I'm vehemently against that. So
right, absolutely. Peter, which one of these kind of jumps out at you?
The one that I find more interesting is probably like the most plausible would be T'Pol's father,
right?
Just because then we could further tie in the Romulan War. The only thing is that it would have to be something that only we as the audience know.
Right.
Because there's the whole shtick about no one's ever seen a Romulan. And if you get to a point of like, oh, well, her dad's a Romulan, you kind of blow that. So it would have to be one of those, like how they did it in the Vulcan's Forge arc in season 4, where like you had the Romulans in the background doing their shit, but our character Starfleet never saw them.
Right.
So as long as you could do something like that, where like we find, like maybe they find out that he's working for the Romulans, but only we as the audience with like cuts to different parts know that he is in fact a Romulan.
Right. So it's not like the Borg episode they had where the Borg were there, they were doing all the Borg stuff. It's just the name never got spoke. So, well, we don't know who they are. Or the Ferengi episode.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing. Like, and like with the Borg Queen origin, they did that in Star Trek Legacy, the video game.
Right.
It's not a compelling story. I don't really like that.
It sounds really dull, to be perfectly honest.
It's not that great. In part because, like, I agree with Aaron. The Borg are best when they're a force of nature. That's the terror of them. Is it's this impersonal force.
Yeah.
It's this impersonal force that is going to strip you of your individuality and make you one of them. Like that's the terrifying part of the Borg. And that's something that we kind of lost sight of over time. Prodigy actually managed to do it best out of everyone, which is hilarious.
Right. The tune. Yeah, exactly.
But that's the one that I would like to see. I wouldn't mind seeing something else in the Mirror Universe if they did it well, because In a Mirror Darkly was absolutely amazing. I loved that. As we know, I'm a fan of showing TOS in a light that actually appreciats it,
right? Which is
nothing. Which is not what anyone ever does at this point,
right?
Everyone shits on it and says all sorts of things that are absolutely untrue. But like as I've said, there's a way to light it. There's a way to shoot it that makes it work. But so I would like if they did that, because then you can also see a little bit of development of the Mirror Universe. Because I think that Enterprise understood the Mirror Universe a little bit better than definitely how Discovery worked, and it's more akin to the original intent of the Mirror Universe than some points of how Deep Space Nine used it.
I completely agree with that. That's
because the point is like kind of that Saturday morning cartoon wahaha part, and they did that, but also added a little bit of maturity, which was nice. So that's something that I could see interest in. I don't really care too much. So, but out of those are the two that I would be more interested in out of the other ones. Gotcha. Doctor Who crossover would be hilarious, but I don't.
That's wild, and I don't even know that was in there when I first viewed this article a couple of years ago when I first had this idea to have this.
I remember hearing that rumble at some point before.
That's awesome. All right, the main one that I grabbed from the Screen Rant article, because I had a Screen Rant and a Memory Alpha and then a Trek movie, which is our main source of news that we frequently use. That was just really, it was the coverage from a con. But the one from the Screen Rant that I thought was compelling, and I had heard about this before, was the potential of Shran, as Jeff Combs, becoming a series regular. Because as you see, he was displaced in season 4. He lost his command when his ship was destroyed. He was pretty sure that his career was in the toilet, and then he was very unfortunately revisited upon as the oh, my kid's in trouble focus of the holodeck finale of the series. We don't need to go over it again.
There is no, these are the voyages in Boss.
Yes, it is. We deleted the program. But him as the, non-human character who reflects back on humanity, which is a standard of all Star Trek series, Spock, Data, Odo. But he's also mean as shit because it's Shran. That would have been quite the fire. Because let's say he became a series regular, so he's part of Starfleet in this hypothetical scenario. So he's an officer on the ship, and he's chafing against the ways of living in the pink skin world and evolving Starfleet or whatever it is, or whatever angle they decided to take it. But yet, apparently Brian Braga had gone so far as to tell the cast that would be the case. So I think that would have been fantastic. I would have enjoyed every moment because, again, we all enjoy Jeff Combs. I've met a couple of different times. He was a guest at Grand Rapids Comic-Con, the spring show last year, and came by the booth and chatted with us. And I've met him on the cruise. And just overall super fun, nice guy. So apart from what we've read, what other, God, I would love to have seen blank, Aaron, you got to do yours. Peter, did you have one that we've not discussed that you're like, I really, really want to see blank?
The big one that we all know is the Romulan War itself, because they were gearing up for it. That's the big overarching theme that I wanted to see. Mm-hmm. I also would have loved to see more of Archer working with the various other species to, you see the workings of why the Federation works the way that it does.
Right.
So the Andorians have their way of doing things. The Vulcans have their way of doing things. The Tellarites always have their own way of doing things.
Right.
And theirs is always right. So, but it would be interesting. I would be interested because they did some of this in season 4 with some, with the Romulan bits and then some of the other stuff, but seeing everyone work together and how Archer's experiences led into some of the policies and some of the protocols that Starfleet has, which they did in some of the earlier ones, all this stuff. And they're maybe at some point there'll be a directive for something like that, like a Prime directive. Some of the lines are a little cheesy when they do that.
Right. Yeah. They kind of hit that putt into the putt course. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, but I really, really liked when Enterprise tied things in or foreshadowed things. That was really when it did its best work as a prequel. When it does its own thing, it's good too. But when you look at it as a prequel, when it does that foreshadowing, it that's when it really, really shines, I think. And so seeing more of that in the building of the Federation, or even in a theoretical real finale, actually hearing Archer's damn speech.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes. Please. It was like we weren't in enough pain watching that episode that they couldn't even give us that itty bitty little payoff that would have.
I understand that it's nice. It's being compared to the Gettysburg Address and such. It's how do you write something like that? I get that, but at the same time, it's just a peek, just a little, 3 sentences, just show us the beginning of it.
Just a little P. What Chris Rock does a routine talking about Stevie Wonder. He says, "Can't we give this man a peek? Just a little, just a little peek."
Yeah, something like that. So, but those are like the main things that I would have liked to see. Is like, and I mean, to Aaron's point, I wanted to see more of like Trip and T'Pol and how that actually worked out.
Right.
But that's like the main thing that I want. The Romulan story and the Romulan War itself, but also just like how Archer worked to create the worked to create Starfleet as we know it. Because clearly, based on a lot of things that people say, or like in the Mirror Universe thing, he is instrumental in it. So why is he instrumental? I would love to see that.
Right. Why? Peter the Philosopher. All right. So final question for the two of you. Out of 10, what are the chances that Enterprise could ever make any kind of significant comeback TV movie, guest appearance, some kind of tie-in with the future show? 20 years down the line when the cast has been scattered to the winds and like Jolene Blalock doesn't even act anymore, and we never see Scott Bakula connected with Star Trek in any way. You never see him in any cons or anything. What do you think are the chances that the cast could come back together in some fashion and be those characters again? 1 out of 10.
Yeah, I was involved in a conversation about this online a while back, and it's kind of slim to none. Mm-hmm. Maybe a 5 or a 6 that would likely happen, but I would love to see like a revisit of at least Archer and his character in his later years during his presidency of the Federation, and this concept of turning it into like a political drama.
Like the West Wing or something.
Exactly. A mini series. Yeah, I will agree with you that is exactly what I'd like to see, but I would put it at like a 3 or a 4 as far as possibility that would happen. Because again, Scott Bakula, you never hear. I don't even know that he talks about Star Trek in any of the press in his career at all. I don't know if he's salty about it. I sure would be. I know that the actors who play Trip and Reed and Mayweather were on the cruise, and they're almost always doing things, and they do podcasts and stuff. So they're clearly very good. And so is John Billingsley, who's just an absolutely fantastic guy. Loved talking to him and meeting him the times that I have. But as far as reconnecting with Jolene Blalock and Scott Bakula, of which you would certainly need Scott Bakula to really make something work. 3 or 4 is probably hopeful. So, Peter, do you like our idea, or do you have like a different idea of?
I like the ideas. Yeah, I'm going to be Captain Pessimist over here and put it more at like a 1 or a 2.
Yeah,
I just don't see it very likely. I would probably have an aneurysm from joy if it happened, but I don't see it happening. I mean, it is possible if there is enough people saying that they wanted it, and there were like Braga and other folks got involved, that we could have something like the Babylon 5 animated film that came out.
Right. Yeah, that would certainly be
that's a way to sidestep the look, they're older. So like that would be a possibility, but I see part of the reason that I see it very, very slim is that Manny Koto is no longer with us.
Correct.
If he were still around, then I would put the probability a little bit higher, simply because with the resurgence, then people be like, hey, look, he did a good job. Let's maybe try to get him to do a little bit more. Right. And I have very little doubt that he would at least play with the idea.
Yeah, be a champion, because he was what really made the show great.
He's really what helped the show become a good thing. And it's the same. It's the same thing that, like, for instance, happened with the proposed Galaxy Quest television show. Once Alan Rickman died, it was done, because there's certain things that just wouldn't work if you didn't have certain people involved. Right. And I think it's the same case with this.
Yeah,
because it's possible but unlikely, unless they were doing it just voice, that they would get Jolene Blalock back to do T'Pol. And I mean, Scott Bakula is busy with NCIS, so it would be a little hard anyway.
that show's not. He's not even on this show. That show ended. So I don't know. Okay. I don't know what he's doing. But like I said, I'm not recalling a time. And by all means, listeners, hit us up on our SFU Discord or certainly on Threads, or even I'm reviving our mailbag, secretfriendsunite@gmail.com. Send us an email if you know something more than we do about Scott Bakula and how he feels about Star Trek. I'd love to hear it. I mean, obviously, I'd give it a good Google, but I would love to have somebody write in and have us read that person's remarks. I think I would be very interested to know. I mean,
the last I saw from him was way back in like 2010.
Yeah.
And he didn't seem super salty about it at that point, but
they did. It was one of the last things that you really saw Avery Brooks on, but they did the Captains.
That's what I'm referring to.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, which was 2010, 2011. I think I've got that on disc somewhere. But yeah, that was the last anybody certainly ever saw of Avery Brooks as far as related to Star Trek. So, all right, well, guys, this has been fantastic. I envisioned doing this segment when I was laying out the keel, the framework for the show back in fall of 2020, which is when I got this rolling with Todd's suggestion. I give him the full credit for being the person who encouraged me to do this show, and with a host who is was with me for a while. He left, some other people came on board, and then Peter, you're the one who's been with me the longest, so I'm very grateful for that. But it's great to have Aaron and then Jen on with us now, and of course Jen will, I'm sure, be back next time when we are going to embark on the 5th season of Star Trek: The Next Generation, which I'm very, very excited about, because that was the prime of when I became a huge TNG fan was season 5. So definitely looking forward to that. So let's wrap it on up. Aaron, where do people find you out there in the world?
You can find most of my social media links for my SFI chapter, the USS Rhapsody, at ussrhapsody.org.
Excellent. And Peter, where do people find you? When they find you?
When you find me. Yeah, that's really the thing. I'm not around too much. You can find me around the social webs at Petrus Aquinas. You can also find me on ELH's Twitch channel playing various Star Trek Adventures games, sometimes running them. And you can find me behind the scenes at Star Trek Excelsior.
So. Excellent. And I am around the internets on Threads and Instagram as C3 Carpenter. Go ahead and spell it out. But just like these two gents, I spend a lot of time doing the SFI thing. I am on our USS Grand Petoskey Discord chatting about that. But I'm also very fortunate to be the head dude for SFI chapters here in Michigan and 3 over in Canada, which we call Region 13. A lot of great folks. Drop me a line at RC13 at sfi.org. Just spell it out and use the numbers. And let me know if you live somewhere that you'd like to find other trekkers in that vicinity. I can help you. Also, sfi.org, where we have a full searchable list. And let's get you connected. Let's get you part of this great thing that we do. And thank you so much for listening. Friends, as always, I'm going to tell you that sharing is caring and to keep on trekking.
And of course, always remember that 1,000 stars is 1,000,000 maybes.
Peace and long life.
This podcast is part of the Secret Friends Unite podcasting network. Visit secretfriendsunite.com for more great shows, articles, news, reviews, and more. Secret Friends Unite podcasts are available on Apple, Google, Spotify, and other podcast services around the world. If you'd like to be part of the conversation, you can join us on Facebook or our new Discord server, or follow at Secret Friends U on Twitter. Please subscribe to Secret Friends Unite on YouTube and visit our merch store at tpublic.com. Just search Secret Friends Unite. Thanks for listening.